Arc 5, Chapter 58, Faith. Immediately after Amelia had spoken, having put her hand on her chest, what rang out was a laugh that could not be hidden. Although what leaked out at first was only a breath, he soon could endure no more, and his voice gradually escalated in volume until it became cachinnation. Straightening his back, Regulus laughed loudly as if he had heard a great joke. Sticking a hand into his white hair and tousling it, the murderer was now immersed in a fit of laughter that no one else could understand. Subaru could tell from his smug demeanor that Amelia's speculation was correct.
You bastard! What's so funny?
Of course it's funny, isn't it? Or rather, you are. I really must suggest that, in this desperate situation, you should give up on trying to think and we can all laugh together. On that note, do you understand your current situation? With your own hands, push the most critical of critical points into this calamity!
No words could be fitting. Only in this moment was Regulus's reply so perfectly reasoned that it could be met with naught but speechlessness. Subaru turned his head to look to Amelia, confirming with her whether the speculation could be taken as proven. However, towards Subaru's sneering gaze, Amelia shook her head.
There's no mistake. I've had the microspirits confirm, and I can feel it myself. Inside me, there's something extraneous that doesn't belong to me. It feels really disgusting.
Amelia's assertion brought with it a desperate presentation of the current situation. The effect of Lion's Heart had moved to Amelia. In other words, the only way to stop Regulus now would be to stop Amelia's heartbeat as well.
In the first place, why is Amelia's heart? Could it be I made a mistake regarding Little King's effects? His heart. Anyone he so wishes.
If it were that kind of ability, there existed no loopholes in Regulus's authority. If he could give his heart to even hostiles and strangers, that would mean that as long as the human race lived on, a way to kill Regulus did not exist. Rather, if it could be that his heart could replace that of any living creature.
Shameless.
The worthless howls of a defeated dog are pleasant to hear. It doesn't matter what you have to say. Just keep running with your temper, searching for some ridiculous excuse for your failure is the right of the loser. And enjoying superiority while hearing them is my right as the winner. Isn't bad. Not bad at all!
I don't meet your standards for a wife. You were saying that earlier.
So annoying. Going on and on arrogantly as if you're strong enough to speak with your own rights. More importantly, how are you planning to take responsibility for killing my wives? My ideal wives. How long do you think it took to gather such a group? How many years do you think it takes? Obviously of age, but of lacking anything like a wife or lover. Do you want me to be one of those garbage widowers who no one wants? Till I find a new wife? You have the obligation to join me!
Regulus used stern words to smack at Amelia, full of spirit as he voiced his abhorrent rhetoric. The violent reasoning that the murderer believed in completely convinced that his heart was indeed within Amelia. If so, the possibility of removing Regulus's heart from Amelia.
Would you like to try? To see if there's somewhere else you can move my heart to?
Huh?
Method is simple if you want to try it. Right now, just kill this girl before you. If you stop her breathing, you'll naturally understand whether or not my authority will stop. Very, very simple, effective, and reasonable. You can't do it, can you? If you do something like that, with all the motives and values you've challenged me with in the first place, won't you have lost your self-justifying reasons?
Although hard to admit, Regulus was right. Subaru did not possess the courage to sacrifice Amelia. Call him selfish, call him arrogant, only that he could not do. In order to defeat Regulus, they had already tossed aside the lives of his wives. Even with the revelation that there had been no alternatives to those sacrifices, in no way could they compare with the life of Amelia or his other comrades. Natsuki Subaru's choices were, as always, selfish to a disgusting degree.
You see, someone like him could never. In that case, how about offing yourself in proxy? Simple, isn't it? Just like what you did to the others? Or what? You can't do it? So you clearly taken the lives of others without consent, but because you treasure your own so much you can't do it? How amazing and how repulsive, isn't it?
Subaru?
Wait! You can't! Seriously, that is unacceptable.
At Regulus's provocation, Amelia seemed to be calling to Subaru with a determined sound. Hearing the unsparing tone of her voice, Subaru hurriedly stopped Amelia in fear. Even if she gave in to the provocation, surely she would not immediately make the choice to abandon herself. However, Amelia had already done a good job of choosing the worst option if she did not have the means to win. And so, Subaru had only the thought that he would absolutely not choose this path. In that case, they had lost. Calling Amelia's name had only stopped her, but he could speak no words.
Then, in that case, we're about ready to draw this to a close, aren't we? Although keeping a filthy woman like you isn't in my interest, for the time being, I'll compromise. Before finding my next wife, you'll join me for a bit. So, I'll just have to kill this guy. He's already infringed on my rights to this point. Ah, that's right. So, why did you laugh earlier?
Before Subaru, who clenched his teeth, Regulus happily turned the corners of his mouth upward. A torrent of mana welled around Amelia as she planned to make her own decision. At the same time, Regulus, not caring at all, laughed.
You're that guy, aren't you? That loud voice in the city that yammered on right before my wedding? Killing a single archbishop or whatever? What a joke, right? Condolences if you really thought you could best me just because you killed that disgrace. That man, both before and after becoming a Sin Archbishop, was never accomplished anything, has always been a damned fool.
Regulus, standing and giggling. What his words referred to was, without a doubt, the madman Betelgeuse Romanicanti, who Subaru found abhorrent as well. Betelgeuse had been the worst kind of lunatic, with no redeeming qualities. He felt not a shred of goodwill for the lunatic, instead hating him down to his bone marrow, and would never spare him, even were he to come back as a ghost. But nevertheless, seeing the Sin Archbishop ridicule Betelgeuse, who was supposed to be his comrade, and Subaru's heart grew in terrible and primitive feeling of unpleasantness. It compounded further into this extreme situation, with the possibility of defeating Regulus, with Amelia's life and death at stake. Then again, Betelgeuse should have been a loathed, lunatic opponent, mad blood-stained laughter appearing in his mind. While thinking back on him, he lifted his face. Then something felt as if it had begun to stir within his chest, and he seized it, swallowing his breath. Could it be that something like that was also possible?
Could it be done?
Incomprehensible. Strictly speaking, no one could guarantee the possibility that had appeared within Subaru's mind. Just like bringing an empty table to a negotiation, or rather, it was closer to being the product of Subaru's delusions, merely Subaru's own feelings. But that was precisely why only Subaru was able to arrive at this possibility. That notion now, based just on intuition, even a god would not know if it could succeed. But
Amelia.
feeling the mana that seemed to have risen to its limit, Subaru called to her. Amelia remained silent, only revealing the realization of a tragedy. Nevertheless, deep in her eyes, a hint of emotion flashed through. That was her expectation and trust in Subaru, who watched her. As if to lend support to those feelings, Subaru asked,
Amelia,
Mm-hmm.
can you completely trust me
Mm-hmm.
and leave everything to me?
Yes.
Her response to this question came simply and without hesitation. Amelia placed a hand on their chest, and for the first time since returning to the battlefield, revealed a smile.
I believe that Subaru can do anything.
Ah, damn, how despicable this was. A girl who he liked treating him with unflinching trust. How could he fail? Whether holding tight with hands or biting teeth with teeth, he was not allowed to fail here. Subaru slowly breathed deep, then slowly released the breath, then glanced toward Regulus, who watched them in silence. Regulus did not obstruct their conversation, just waited leisurely with arms crossed.
Aren't you a bit too relaxed?
Aren't I usually relaxed?
Any trace of failure and the like, not even a speck remained. Regulus had revealed all his preparations and wanted to slaughter Subaru. In truth, Regulus's authority, Lion's Heart, was perfect. Even after its mechanism had been clarified, victory was still placed somewhere nigh unreachable. However, precisely because he was convinced of his impending victory, he would watch Subaru's struggles and efforts from aside, without intervention, how the others would do to make the situation worse for themselves. He had no idea what was happening. And at that point, it was the same for Subaru himself. If Beatrice were here, there might have been another method. If that intelligent girl had been by his side, there certainly would have been a less risky way to win. In the depths of his chest lay the connection with the girl who was his comrade. Certainly, after all this was over, he would be in for a scolding from her. Not being scolded wouldn't do. So now that he was alone, recalling the times when he had been alone, the memories remaining within his chest, those were certainly not ones which brought happiness, awaking only an initial landscape of terror and agony.
Subaru, do it.
Amelia's call became strength for him to make the decision. Subaru violently seized his own chest, rousing something within him that was truly difficult to consider his, concentrating his consciousness on the center of the whirlpool where this chaotic black force swirled, liberating it. In this moment, he would call it what it truly was. In order to have the murderer who had insulted the lunatic understand what was about to happen, only this once, this power inherited from that abhorrent madman.
Come forth, unseen hand!
Invisible providence, or rather, unseen hand. The force that surged through his body, Subaru defined as the power of a witch, had its origins in the witch factor. He had heard from Echidna in her dream citadel that he had gained the witch factor upon killing the madman Petalgears. What detriments it had yet were unclear though. However, the power which had bestowed an invisible magical hand to Subaru undoubtedly had its origins there. Therefore, until now, Subaru had never sought to use the witch factor as his own source of power. The nature of this power being similar to that of that madman's was because the witch factor of sloth inherently held this nature. That was what he believed. He did not even want to consider the possibility of Petalgears running amok within him. But if that were the case, then what was this feeling? Echoing, lively, silently cheering from inside Subaru. Cheering for being called upon. Cheering for once again being able to use its power. Cheering for being requisitioned, being able to fulfill its goal. And then was only an unspeakable, incomprehensible joy. Accompanying that liberation of power, that happiness and appreciation, as well as that feeling of gratitude. These incomprehensible waves of emotion were in no way a problem that Subaru himself could solve. Accompanying Subaru's loud scream was Regulus's own astonished cry as he looked to the sky. He should not be able to see it, because this was an invisible magical hand. This dirty trick, perfect for assassins due to its invisibility. Regulus had showered it in insults, scorning it as insignificant and a failure. Furthermore, yes, it was nothing more than a watered-down version of that failure of a power. Only one in number, with an incredibly short range and too many unknown factors. As the key to breaking through this situation, there should be a limit to unreliability. The first step of summoning the magical hand had been passed. Starting now, he would move on to the unknown second step and the final third step. With his own consciousness, Subaru commanded the fingertips to take action, infusing his own intention into the magical hand that seemed woven by shadow.
Amelia!
And once again, he confirmed whether she was ready, looking to steel himself. Along with that sound, Amelia closed her eyes, nodding as if she understood what would happen after this.
It's fine. You're here, Juice.
Amelia's eyes were filled with warmth and understanding as she spread her arms. repeatedly preparing for what Subaru's planning. As if having foreseen what would happen, she shortened the distance to her heart. Subaru did not hesitate as he brought the magical hand into her chest. The invisible hand slid towards the center of Amelia's chest. As the fingertips passed through her white skin without resistance, Amelia's shoulders jumped as if she had felt something. However, the hand did not hitch. Through the strenum, passing the space between the lungs, finally reaching the pulsating source, the magical hand had arrived straight at Amelia's heart. The second step had been accomplished. When the taboo was triggered, the witch's magical hand would easily phase through Subaru's body, only causing his heart to ache. This was an application of that principle. The only way forth was to gamble on the fact that the unseen hand and the witch's magical hand shared that property. However, so far, this bet had been successful. The problem was that, after this step, there was no precedent for that power. If it were to just seize Amelia's heart, he could do so in an instant, but that would make no sense. This power was not to be used for that. So, what was this power for? Right now, in this moment, this power would be used to save. Was this really possible? With his mind drifting in a sea of confusion, Subaru took a deep breath. Unseen hand. Could it really be used as a hand with which to save others? Wielded by the madman named Pedalgues Romani Conti, how many lives had been stolen by this power? Even though an ability was about the way it was used, oftentimes it would have a limited scope of application. Was Unseen Hand too the type of power that could bring naught but destruction? This power. It was hard to believe that it had been created for the sake of keeping someone alive, no matter what.
Subaru?
Hesitating and doubting in that moment, Amelia's voice, which he should not have been hearing, reached him.
It'll be fine, because I have faith in both of you.
Who and what was she talking about? Amelia directed her trust to Subaru and to another person he did not know. But with ease, he accepted and believed in all of it. This hand absolutely would not hurt Amelia.
My third hand!
Within his heart, the undispellable doubts about this power dissipated. How this power had originated did not matter anymore. This power, right now, was in Subaru's hands, and Subaru had no intent of hurting Amelia. And perhaps, something existed within the power itself. Inside Amelia's chest, the magical hand weaved by shadow began to close. Fingertips touched Amelia's heart, beating like a metronome, and Amelia gave a slight gasp at the gentle grip on the surface of her heart. Rather than pain, it was akin to a slight itch. Inside the chest of Amelia, whose cheeks were dyed red, the magical hand closed its fingers to see something certain. A heartbeat different from Amelia's own. That little lion's heart.
Gotcha!
He could not afford to pull it out. So, with his magical hand, Subaru crushed that heart, that which so shamelessly continued to beat within Amelia. Amelia's heart received not the slightest bit of damage, merely defeating a parasitic organ, harmful, but yet sang odes to love. Subaru truly did feel a solid sensation from that third hand that did not exist. And then, at that time, he experienced the cost of using unprecedented concentration on a power that was not his own. Organs feeling a pain as if being carved, rushing forth was a sense of despair as if he had been tainted. Subaru immediately fell upon the ground with both knees. Harsh coughs that were even tinged with blood wrecked him.
Subaru!
Amelia reached out a hand towards Subaru, who knelt on the ground still soaked with water, blood leaking from the corners of his mouth. He took her outstretched hand and placed it on his face.
Still alive, right?
I'm fine. My heart is perfectly fine. Still beating inside me.
Subaru used the touch and the feeling of coursing blood of the hand to reassure himself of reality, and Amelia used her empty hand to confirm her heartbeat. Without a doubt, in this moment, present there was a heartbeat that seemed to celebrate what had just occurred. And then, Regulus alone wore an expression of being unable to comprehend the two he gazed upon.
Huh? What happened? Suicide or those around you? Or something only those involved with you can understand? What's this farce? It's what happened. You!
You didn't notice.
What are you talking about? Have I noticed what? When not a single change is...
Your feet. They're getting wet.
Subaru pointed as to instruct Regulus, who seemed to have succumbed to his anger. Regulus looked at his feet in suspicion, only to find his feet growing wet. He fell momentarily silent, widening his eyes in shock, noticing the reality that his white outfit, his white shoes, and the hem of his clothing were being soaked through by the water by his feet.
People... Ah!
Noticing this change with a response too slow, Regulus bared his teeth and waved his arm, but a slender white leg struck out, kicking the side of Regulus's face and sending him flying. Completely unprepared for this direct kick, Regulus gave a wail as he was kicked towards the ground filled with water. Half his body was drenched further by it, and a shoe print remained on the side of his face that had been kicked.
This kind of...
As if unable to comprehend this reality in the slightest, Regulus blankly lifted his face. Looking down at Regulus, Amelia, who had performed the beautiful kick, tilted her head slightly.
I did it! I finally landed a hit!
You...
Amelia's short sentence, being filled with a sense of accomplishment, made Regulus's face grow redder and even more agitated. Using the motion of standing to gather water, Regulus scattered droplets of water at Amelia. However, the pain of taking the kick prevailed, and his posture collapsed, the bomb of water flying in a completely wrong direction, and instead leaving him wide open.
Ice brand arts.
Creating a large mallet of ice in her hands, Amelia then slammed it directly into the center of Regulus's body. Receiving a swing that caused his bones to creak, the body of the murderer rolled on top of the water. With unsuppressed coughs, slamming his fist into the ground many times without pause, Regulus glared at them with widened eyes.
Why? Why? The people like you! How? What? Why? To the authority of greed! Am I right?
If you looked at all that and still haven't figured it out, it'd be useless to explain it to you. Well, it's simple. A very simple thing.
As he pitied Regulus as the latter screamed, Subaru endured internal cries of agony from his organs, revealing a sneer, revealing a smile so vicious that it wouldn't even lose to Betelgeuse's.
You were played by your opponents while you ridiculed them so much.
Even if he did not quite understand the meaning of those words, the intent to taunt would be clearly conveyed. Regulus screeched with a sound that could not even be called a sound, ignoring Amelia and taking a stance to launch himself at Subaru. However, he was quickly cut off by Amelia.
Earlier, I attacked you instead of your wives. Because that doesn't seem to have worked, so I have to do one land properly.
Stop kidding around!
Appearing over Regulus's head, countless icicles had been created. Each one varied in size, but if they all fell together, they would bring instant death. Amelia's disgust of Regulus had reached a point that even her gentle self could not stand. Climbing to his feet with a leap, Regulus struck at the falling icicles with water. Though the icicles shattered, the finer shards still had their uses. Ceaselessly tossing out bullets of water as if in a storm, Regulus cursed loudly as his body was bathed all over by ice and rain while running across the water. The snow-white crystals of ice turned to fog, then freezing the streets that had been doused in water. For Subaru, too, the water along his knees formed a film of ice around him, scaring him into hurriedly pulling his hands out of the water. Even with consideration for Subaru, such destruction had befalling his surroundings. Of course, Regulus, the actual target at hand, was simply no match, but...
Completely unhurt?
In the scene of frost, after the barrage of ice had ended, Regulus remained, standing and alive. Knees supporting his arms, spitting out uneven breaths, even though his entire body had been soaked by water. He still avoided meeting his end by being skewered by an icicle.
Absolutely.
Taking deep breath after deep breath, Regulus clutched his chest. Looking at that demeanor, Subaru understood. The invincibility from Lion's Heart could still be used even if his heart were inside his own body. However,
If you stop time to become invincible, you also have to stop the heart inside you. This is absolute invincibility, but with a time limit, right?
it seemed he had struck true as Regulus displayed his rage, all the while enduring the pain in his chest. With the time limit now in place, sooner or later, after repeated attacks, Amelia could land an effective one. In that case, Regulus was now an army of one that now had to put his everything into attack.
That's... Don't you feel despicable in the slightest?
Regulus pointed a finger at Subaru, the latter analyzing his opponent's strength. Additionally, he then pointed towards Amelia's direction, looking back and forth between the two of them.
People ganging up on one person is an act is essentially extortion. Your conscience does not ache? Isn't there something wrong with your fundamentals as human beings? Do you truly hold no doubts about yourselves? Having doubts should be only natural, shouldn't it?
Ah, man, you're really something else.
This was in fact the same mouth that had, under the advantage of Lion's Heart, spoken non-stop. Having now lost that effect and being put in a disadvantageous position, he dared to use that shortcoming to request justification out of his opponents. Subaru had already completely exceeded surprise, now on the verge of even wanting to respect him. Such an existence without a shred of human dignity would perhaps never been seen again from antiquity until now, and from now unto the hereafter.
That is to say, this is what you believe. Because 2-on-1's too despicable, you hope to be able to fight an upright, one-on-one battle. Because that's the way battle should be. Is this the case?
Exactly. You just take that as granted. What do you take me for? Who do you think I am? I am Regulus Corneus, the Sin Archbishop of the Witch Cult representing greed! The world's most satisfied, most resolute existence!
Regulus spoke thus in a trembling voice as he looked down at his hands. Subaru was now completely speechless, so, in Subaru's stead, Amelia spoke.
Going back on your word immediately after you say something, and your speeches are entirely devoid of actual meaning. I think you are the most pitiful person in the world.
Don't mock me! Greed. I'll definitely make you regret this!
Even shallow in his rage at the contempt of others, Regulus repetitively, endlessly repeated the drone of his curses. Looking at that helpless demeanor, Subaru could finally feel fully relieved. Regulus was genuinely unable to win in any situation where he did not have the highest advantage possible. If he could use Lion's Heart for even a brief time, he still had a chance at victory. Clearly this was the case, but upon seeing a little bit of difficulty, he would immediately give up on the proverbial game without even bothering to look at the whole board.
Scorning progress in life will lead you to fall down in unexpected places. Oh, nothing. Talking to myself. More importantly, we'll accept your challenge of one-on-one combat.
That's more like it. That's how it should be. Of course, a knight would not let their liege step up first.
Smoothly going on board with that convenient tale, Regulus immediately attempted to attach conditions that gave him further advantage. Between Subaru and Amelia, their level of combat needed no comparison. As long as he first killed Subaru and caused Amelia to waver, there was hope for his victory. Straining that mind of his that did not exist in the first place, that conniving result seemed to suit Regulus's taste perfectly. However, if he wanted to best Subaru in terms of unrelenting perseverance, he was hundreds of thousands of years too soon. Finding a chance to win in a situation where victory was impossible, this was Subaru's truest way of fighting. In terms of determining victory or defeat, the match between Regulus and Subaru had already begun.
Indeed. Having a night battle is the righteous way.
In that case...
So, Now that it's come to this again, I'll leave the rest to you.
His feet still submerged in a shallow puddle, Subaru spoke after exhaling deeply. At those words, Regulus tilted his head with a... Huh? However, Subaru's words were not meant for him, but for him.
Ah, I see. The one-on-one duel you have proposed. I accept it as a knight.
Responding was a flame. In these flooded streets, a young man who caused not a single ripple as he strode across the water in approach. He, contrary to Regulus and his inexplicable mystery, possessed protections bestowed by the heavens on those they loved.
Of the kingdom of Lagunica's royal guard, from the lineage of sword saints, Reinhard von Estrella.
Standing before Subaru and Amelia, the knight who had reported his name pointed at Regulus, his sword sheathed. That demeanor of denomination was an invitation to begin a one-on-one duel. That was something that even the bow hunter Elsa would respond to. The well-established declaration of a duel. In contrast, Regulus stood, stretching his hands before him.
Wait! This isn't normal!
The Sword Saint would not show him any trace of tolerance, as someone who defiled the sacred duel, the very definition of a warrior. The opening blow came from below Regulus's underarm, vertically slashing across his body. Regulus had not even the chance to cry out before being slammed far into the sky. Before his eyes was the demolished city of water. He had been sent flying into the sky to an altitude such that he had a panoramic view of the entire city. Whether a cry or a curse, a scream incomprehensible to all who heard it echoed.